In this video, I'm going to continue to work on the Zoe pumps, and I'm going to do the UV unwrapping and binding to the skeleton, and I'm also going to convert this shoe into a version for the mid height foot and a version for the flat height foot. So there are 3 options available. So the first thing I've done already is to join all the various pieces together. So I applied any modifiers that might be attached to them so that I wouldn't double up on modifiers, and I wouldn't add modifiers to pieces that didn't need it, such as a solidify modifier on the heel piece. And I've joined all the pieces together by selecting them all and then pressing Ctrl J to join them. And then I just named the object Zoe Kitten L because this is the left foot. I don't know why, but I usually work on the left foot as a rule, and then I copy and mirror it over to the right foot. I just find it to work easily that way. So if you've changed the mode, the workflow mode you're working with in Avastar, switch it back to skin and weight, and make sure that the volume bones are visible. It's not necessary for this particular type of shoe, but this is the way I find it easiest, just to keep it in this mode so that I don't have to think about switching backwards and forwards. The Slink Avastar kits come out of the box all ready for you to just start working. You don't have to worry about workflow modes or anything else, any layout or anything. It just comes the way you can just start working on it. So now that I've joined all these pieces together, and you can see I used a curve here to make a nice little bow on the front of it, I'm going to UV unwrap it. So we tab into edit mode, and then I'll do it piece by piece so that I can actually see what I'm working with. The first piece I'll do is the main shoe. So we select it, and then we select Ctrl I to select everything else, except the main shoe part, and then press H to hide it. That way we isolate the shoe and we don't have to see anything else and try and work around anything else. So I'll also hide the body parts. We don't really need them for the moment. I'll put a seam down the middle back of this shoe because that's a natural place for a seam to fall on this particular style. Your main leather piece would be the front of the shoe, up the sides, and then joined down the back. If you study shoes at all, you'll see that that's the way it would work. And I'm going to put a seam down the middle of the join between the inner and outer layer of this leather. So select those 2 edges by pressing Alt and then selecting with your left or right button, whichever one you use, and then press Mark Seam. And then we press Alt H to bring everything back, and we'll do something else. So the next one I'm going to do is the heel. Select it, press Ctrl I. Just make this mouse size a little bit smaller. Let's go down to there. And then press H to hide everything. I'm going to put a seam down each corner. It doesn't really matter where the seam goes on the heel, actually, because of the way that the heel is designed. So let me see now. So let me see. I'll take this away. I don't want this to be selected, so I'm just going to press C and then Shift and deselect it that way. And then I think I will take this front edge along here. So we've got this section here that becomes part of the heel, this section here that becomes part of the UV, and then I'm going to take the entire top edge and then hit Mark Seam. Alt H to bring everything back, and the next part we'll work on is the sole. Ctrl I and H to hide everything. I want to do the sole in 2 parts so that I have shadows in the appropriate places. So I just select that top edge there, make sure it's selected all the way around. If you end up, when you've done a solidify modifier, if you end up with faces along this bottom edge here, for example, you don't need those. You can just delete them, and it makes your UV unwrapping a lot easier as well. So we hit mark seam, Alt H, do this part next, Control I, hide. And you can see that I've ended up with a few little odd vertices here that don't belong, so I'm just going to delete them. You can't see this anyway, but those vertices can cause errors if you don't fix them. So I think with this one, I'm just going to unwrap this so that we have a seam here and a seam here. Actually, this one here, because this is the cut edge, the corner. And then along here, actually, this one. Seam placement takes a little bit of practice to get good seams in the right place that that work well on your UV map and are human readable. I think I like human readable UVs because you can just go into Photoshop and throw textures on them, and you can see exactly what you're doing. Mark seam. Now let's do the straps. Control I, hide. I'm only going to put one seam on each of these. You can see that these are open on each end, which is fine. So I'm going to put a seam along the bottom of each of them. Mark seam. What else needs to be done? The little bow. Let's see now. I'm going to put a seam here. Actually, I might hide these as well, so I can see what I'm doing. A seam there, a seam there, and one down the middle here. One down the middle here, so that we get each bow loop unwrapped separately. Mark seam. And then the last part is the little bit in the middle of the bow. I've already gone ahead and deleted a bunch of edge loops that don't need to be here, but I'll do it here because this part is fairly well hidden and doesn't really need all of these edges, so I'm just going to get rid of them. So I select every second one, and then I just press X and edge loops, and that just dissolves all those edge loops, and we have basically halved the number of faces in that area. So keeping in mind what is underneath the bow rather than on top, because we like to try and either put the seams somewhere where they make sense or hide them, and then that way you won't get ugly seams on your textures. So then under here would be good, and under here, and then on the inside we want a seam here, and we want another one in here, so this way those two pieces will open up flat. And the last piece to be done is the little beads. Control I, H, and I think we will just put a seam here and here. And we also need to put a seam around the inside edges so that we get 4 little pieces here. Now if you do this like I just did there and you select all of those faces there, all of these edges will become a seam, so we don't actually want that. What I'm going to do here is switch to edge select mode, and then that way I can just select that one edge in there, and then I won't make all of those faces into a seam. So we'll do the same thing over here. And then mark seam, bring everything back, and now this should be ready to unwrap. So we select everything, go back into vert select because it's just easy to see, and then we select unwrap, unwrap. And you should find on your UV view a bunch of little islands. Blender's UV Unwrap is pretty good. It's not the best. You have to do some work to rearrange these islands into a suitable layout. But that's fairly easy to do. There's a couple of automated tools. You can select average island scale. You can select pack islands, which will change the, it tries to put it in the way that makes the most sense for the most texture usage. But I usually do it myself. So I move everything outside the UV, start with the biggest islands and where I want the most texture resolution, and work off there. So these two need to have the most texture resolution. So I try and pack them together and make them bigger. Especially the piece that is on the outside. If you go back over to your 3D view and you go into face select, you can select the piece that's on the outside. Just hover over one of the faces and you'll see that that's that piece there. So that piece needs to have the most resolution because you want to see the most detail on it. So we put it in the middle and scale it up. Then we want this piece here, nice and big. So I'm going to turn it around so that it is oriented in such a way that the texture will look nice on it. Scale it up. This piece here. Scale it up. And these pieces don't need to be too big. They're fairly small on the mesh, so you can just leave them as is. And now we can arrange everything around these pieces. So if we just rotate that. I'm pressing shift here to make my rotation not wild so that it will just go nice and quiet, nice and smoothly. You want to make sure they're not overlapping like this because you'll get texture artifacts, and you want to make sure they're not overlapping with the edge. Okay, now we've got all the 4 big pieces in. We can fit everything else in around it. So I'm going to put these straps over here. Actually, I might put that over here. And these little pieces here belong to the bow, so I'm going to scale them up a bit so that we can see. Oh, I accidentally grabbed one wrong piece. Let's put that back over here. If you find you've got something like this going on, you've got proportional editing on, so I'm just going to turn that off. We don't need that. That is not necessary. Scale this up to have a little more detail in the bows, in the beads and the bows. And then just rearrange everything slightly so that it fits and doesn't overlap anywhere. Oh, that's not necessary. That piece is underneath the heel sole, so we won't see it. This piece can be a bit bigger. And this bit can all move. And that's looking pretty good. So now that that's done, the next step is, of course, to attach it to the skeleton and weight it for the foot. So I'm going to turn on the kitten feet again. And all you need to do is select your shoe, select the skeleton, and then down underneath the skinning panel, you will find a button called Bind to Armature. And then underneath that, you will find a strategy. We want to select meshes, and then we want to find the mesh that is required for this particular item. So in this case, it would be this object here. The 2 slink female feet kitten lasts. And then we just select Bind to Armature. And now that that's done, we should be able to hit rotate on this bone here, and the shoe will move with the foot. This is a fairly basic shoe design, so you shouldn't have any clipping with it once you've done that bind with Avastar. It's as simple as that. There's absolutely nothing to change here. There's no weight painting to do. You can see there's no clipping at all whatsoever. If you have a look at the vertex groups that have been copied over, all you should have is the M ankle left and the M knee left. And there's absolutely nothing to change here. That is as simple as it is binding to the Avastar rig for the slink feet. So how do we get a right shoe? All I do here is I go to the modifiers, and I select mirror. So we have a right foot, but that still is attached to the left foot. So we tab into edit mode. I beg your pardon. The first thing we do is apply the mirror modifier. Tab into edit mode, go to wireframe and box select the entire right shoe, and then select P to separate it by selection. And then you can go into the right shoe under the vertex groups button, which is the little triangle with the data tab, which is the little triangle with the 3 dots, and double click on the 2 vertex groups and change left to right. Make sure you use the same capitalization. So if it starts with a capital L, make it start with a capital R, M knee right. And then you need to fix the Avastar binding. So going to the left shoe first, go to Avastar, down to the skinning panel, and click this little refresh button here next to the unbind from armature. Once you click that, and then you do it on the right foot as well. It's not red on the right foot for me in this case because I haven't actually edited this mesh. I edited this one. But this one should now move with the right foot because you changed the vertex groups and you've refreshed the binding. So that's pretty much it for the kitten style of shoe. It's pretty much done. You can upload this to Second Life. You can put it in Substance Painter or Photoshop, create some textures for it, you know, make it look good. The kitten heel style is done. So moving on, I will create a version for the mid-height foot next. I'm going to rename the right shoe to Zoe Kitten R, and I'm going to hide it. And then I'm going to select Zoe Kitten L and press Shift D to duplicate it. Right click to dismiss the move and call it Zoe Mid L. And then I'm going to hide Zoe Kitten L. Turn off the kitten feet and turn on the medium height feet. And you can see there's a little bit of editing to do to this shoe to get it to fit onto the medium height foot. So the first thing I do is tab into edit mode, select all of the meshes, and in side view, rotate the shoe until it roughly fits with the tilt of the foot. press grab to move it so that the heel fits with the heel of the foot. And you can check in wireframe mode whether it's fitting as well. And then I press restrict view so I can see through the other side of the mesh as well, and press box select to select the front of the shoe. And then I just rotate that with proportional editing on, enabled. Rotate, dial up the size of the proportional edit a little. We want to try and get that bottom of the mid-height shoe to roughly the right rotation there. And then I'm going to grab the heel and turn proportional editing off again, rotate it around. We need to be in vertex select mode. Actually, I'm just going to grab the bottom half of that heel. Move this piece down. Put it roughly where it needs to be. So you can see I switch between proportional editing, connected, enabled, and all different modes all the time, depending on what's needed. Straighten that edge up. So all I'm really doing here is just pulling everything into shape for the medium height. Okay, once the heel's in a pleasing shape, we can go work on this section and get the front of this shoe fitted to this foot. Needs to move over slightly. So we just select the red arrow, move it so that it fits. And then I'm going to just grab this part down a little. I'm going to have enable proportional editing on while I do this so that I don't accidentally disconnect the strap from the shoe. You can also do this in sculpt mode if you feel more comfortable in that. And that also allows you to grab everything and pull it at once. So just with the grab tool, massage the shoe into shape around the foot. You turn down the strength of the tool if you need more control over it. Press the shift button to smooth things out a little bit. Okay. Make sure the foot isn't clipping anywhere that it shouldn't be. and that the shape of the heel and everything is nice and pleasing to your eye. You don't have any weird lumps or bumps in it. Just smooth everything out a little bit. And that you've got everything joined up nicely. Oh, I can see a little bit of a problem here. Just pop back into edit mode and move. Turn this off. Move this back a little. And then just the same as we did before, once you've got the shoe fit over the medium foot, you can go into the modifiers, add a mirror modifier, apply the mirror modifier, tab into edit mode, box select the entire right shoe and P to separate it by selection, and then go into the right shoe and select the vertex groups here and change them to right. Just double click. Don't do what I just did. Make sure your caps lock button is off. And change this one to right. And then go into each one under the Avastar panel, under skinning, and press the refresh button. And that's your medium set done. Oh, you can see there's a little strangeness happening back here. So we may actually need to rebind this. Yep, we need to rebind this shoe altogether. So I'm going to delete the right one, press X, select the mesh, select the rig, go to Avastar. And what I'm actually going to do is unbind. And then I'm going to rebind it using the medium foot as its strategy. So strategy meshes, bind to armature. And now we should have a nicely fitting shoe. And now we can just go to the modifier, add the mirror modifier, and apply it. Tab into edit mode. Box select the right shoe, P, separate by selection. And then vertex groups. It's added some M knee right, so there must be something on this. Yeah, M ankle right, M knee right. It doesn't actually need those. Select. See that? Those vertices there don't need any right, but you can just ignore it. It doesn't really make a difference. Delete the M knee right group from this foot, from this shoe. Delete it from this shoe, and then rename this one to right. And right. Now you can see everything is moving properly as it should. Not getting any clipping on the ankle. If you move your foot around and you find your shoe is making a sort of strange shape here, you can just do a little bit of weight editing. If you press V to go into vertex mode, and then you press the, you selected the bone in question, go to vertex mode, and then down here to the smooth button, you can just smooth that out. It's really minor. And then you can do it on the other side as well. So into weight paint mode, select the bone, the ankle bone, because that's the one that's pulling on the mesh. Make sure you're weight painting on the shoe, not the actual foot. Select V and select everything. Press A to select all. And then you can actually press smooth a couple of times. And then you'll be able to go and see whether it's still pulling those vertices, and it is not. It looks perfect. I usually twist my feet and my bones around in all kinds of extreme angles to make sure that it doesn't clip anywhere that it shouldn't. And that is your medium foot done. So I'll rename this Zoe Mid L to Zoe Mid R, and then I will hide it. So we want to hide, just go into object mode on these again because I messed up there. Hide this one and then hide this one. And rather than go from mid to flat, we'll go from the kitten again to flat. It's a lot easier to start low and go high. But in this case, I started with the kitten style and then I decided afterwards to make a flat style. So I will turn the flat feet on and duplicate that kitten foot, Shift D, right click to dismiss it, turn off the original kitten and change this one to Zoe Flat L. And then we want to just shape the foot, shape the shoe to fit with that foot. So we rotate it so that it's reasonably flat here. And move it up so that the heel fits. And what I'm going to do actually is delete this entire heel and use this one as the main heel. So I'll rotate this and I'll scale it on the y-axis, scale it on the x-axis, because I want this one to be a little flat heel. Scale it on the z-axis. And just grab some of these. I'm actually going to do this in sculpt mode so that I can move these pieces nicely. Pull this down so that it fits with the foot. And on the other side as well. Rotate and fit this piece to the front of the foot as well. Make sure you've got proportional editing on so you get a nice smooth movement, nice smooth change, and it works out nice and neat. Just going to delete this errant vertex that I don't need. And I'm also going to delete this one. I don't know where these came from. And I'm also going to delete this section here, because we don't need this part. Just going to hide this heel so that I can see what I'm doing a bit better. And then I'll take this part of the heel and I'll rotate it slightly so that it fits, so that it's nice and straight. And then I will fit it inside the heel there. Takes a little longer to do the flat sole than it did to do the midsole, because you've got to do a little more work to it. Just make sure the shoe is actually connected to the heel there, all around. and that the undersole has a nice shape. And just hit it with the smooth button a few times. Make sure it's not clipping anywhere. Just fit it around the toe here. Definitely takes a little longer to do it this way, but not as long as making the shoe from scratch. So it's a nice way to create 3 different styles without creating 3 different styles from scratch. And the other nice thing about it is once you've done all your UV unwrapping, you can use the same UV for all 3 styles. And the Slink kit also includes a script where you can link all 3 styles together, and when you're wearing the Slink Avatar Enhancement Deluxe feet and you switch the feet via the Physique HUD or the Hands and Feet HUD, the shoes will switch along with them. So it's a nice way to create a sort of 3-in-1 style of shoe that also looks pretty cool. Now once that fitting is done, same deal again. What I might do first is redo the rigging. So we go into Avastar, to skinning and unbind, and then we select the shoe and we select the rig, and then we go to skinning again. Select one Slink female feet flat lasts. It only shows you meshes that are actually visible in your scene. So we can actually turn these off. And if you've got the flat feet lasts available and visible in your scene, it'll only show those. If you've got the Physique Original, it'll show that and you can bind to both. You don't need to in this case. If you've got the Hourglass showing, it'll show you both bodies. You can use that, but we again don't need to in this case. So we will just turn those bodies off. And then with that selected, bind to armature. Just quickly check the vertex groups to make sure there aren't any errant vertices that don't belong. So we've got M ankle left and M knee left, which is all you need for the feet. Go into the shoe, add the mirror modifier, apply the mirror modifier, box select the entire right shoe, don't miss any verts like I just did. P to separate by selection, and then under the vertex, change it to right again. And then you need to refresh the bind. So again, under Avastar, under skinning, click that little refresh button and click that refresh button. And now everything should be working. Looks beautiful. Once again, just check your bones in an extreme position. Press R twice to rotate freely. If you press R once, you'll rotate on the visible plane. If you press R twice, you'll rotate freely. I like to just do that and make sure that my shoes are not doing this. So we select the shoe, we go into weight paint, select the ankle bone because that's the one here causing the trouble. And then we go into V for vertex select, select A to select all of them, and then go to tools and press smooth a couple of times. And those little clipping areas should smooth out. If you want to do it for the foot as well, just go out of vertex select mode by pressing V, select the foot bone, select V again, and smooth. You shouldn't need to worry about this because again, this is the stocking layer. So if you have a tiny little bit of clipping there with the shoes just on the feet, you won't see that at all. And then we go and do it on the other side. Weight paint. Move this around all randomly. V. Smooth. I only ever do 1 or 2 smooths. Saves me an awful lot of time in actual weight painting. Smooth. If you really wanted to get rid of this little clipping here, it's coming from the ankle bone. Select the ankle bone and then press the, go to the subtract with a very low strength. I keep my weight at 0.5 here and the radius at, well, however big it needs to be, but with a very, very low strength. Just tap it. Usually even lower than that, like strength 0.3 is perfect. And that way you can really fine tune. Same again over here. If you wanted to do this on one foot, on one shoe before you go ahead and do the mirror copy, then that's also fine. And make sure you're using the limit selection visible off so you can see through. Be very careful with this in weight paint mode because you can very easily paint through and weight paint something you don't want to weight paint. In this case, I do want to weight paint all through it. So I'll keep it on. But if I only wanted to do this outside surface here and not touch anything on the other side, I'd turn limit selection to visible on. And then that way I can just paint what I can see. Let's smooth everything up. So tappy, tappy, tap, and we're done. Select all of the bones and put them back into position. And that is the flat shoe done. So we rename this flat L11001 to flat R. And all 3 heights are now ready and able to be exported to Second Life. So that's it for this video. I hope this has been helpful. And if you have any questions, get in touch with me either in World or if you have a Slink Creators Kit, I have a Discord channel. You're welcome to join and ask questions in there. I try and answer as often as I can. And other people are also very friendly and helpful. So, you know, don't be shy. Come and say hi. And I'll see you in the next one.